11 of the Wall Street Crossover Show, brought to you by Tip TV in conjunction with our sponsors, Admiral Markets. Welcome back. We have got Mr. Darren Sinden, market commentator from Admiral, with us this morning, or indeed this afternoon. Greetings, young Darren. How the devil are you, sir?
I'm very well, thank you.
Right, we're back. It's day 11. As we always say, if there's anything you want us to cover, any feedback, any observations where you think it'd be bigger, better, braver, please let us know. I don't think we'd be offended.
No, we wouldn't. We always welcome feedback.
Okay, so we basically go through 5 segments. Let's kick off with the first segment this morning. Data released over the European session. What's happened this morning, Darren?
Well, I think we could rename today PMI Wednesday, because very much that's been the data in focus, starting with China services flash PMI, so the service industries in China. This is the early read of how they're doing, and they've come in, well, that number's coming very well.
Slightly ahead.
Yeah, 52.9 against 52.3 in March, and I think that 52.9 reading was better than most people would have envisaged. It's a 4-month high, and it just suggests that there's maybe a two-tier Chinese economy now, with the more sort of modern service businesses doing pretty well. A lot of that could possibly be put down to the performance of Chinese equities recently in stock trading, but it sort of suggests that maybe the service industries are doing better than the traditional old manufacturing businesses in the Chinese economy. And that good news wasn't just contained in China. There was a bit of a spillover into Europe. Spanish services PMI for April came in at
much better.
60.3 versus an expectation of 57.4. So that's the second set of economic data that we've had out of Spain in recent weeks that really suggests that their economy is finally starting to turn around quite quickly. Clearly, one figure, one reading isn't enough to base a decision on, but as I say,
step in the right direction.
Yes, obviously, absolutely right. And here in the UK, last economic data really proper before the election tomorrow. Our own UK services PMI for April comes in at 59.4. Again, that's better than was forecast. 58.5 was the forecast. So perhaps a last-minute boost to the chances of David Cameron in tomorrow's all-important vote. And as ever, the Greece story rumbles on. Perhaps surprising some people, Greece actually managed to make a 200 million euro payment, I believe it was, to the IMF today. Meanwhile, the ECB is debating its emergency lending to the country. We may hear in the next day or so some kind of decision on whether it will proceed with that, whether it's going to tighten the terms that the Greeks can borrow emergency money on to try and turn the screw on the government, as it were.
Understood. Okay, let's now look at the FTSE 100 movers. 3 on your list this morning.
3 today, 3 different industries, but all positive. Imperial Tobacco up 2.5%, good numbers from them, and profits up 3%. So despite the clampdown on tobacco labelling and marketing here in the UK, they continue to do very well. Obviously, emerging markets very important to tobacco companies. GKN. Aerospace, defence and autos, positive numbers from them this morning, and importantly, they've confirmed guidance for the year. The market likes what it hears, and they're up 1.3%. And then perhaps the pick of the bunch is Sage Group. Accountancy software is what they're most known for. Interesting that they were down first thing, down almost by 2%, and swung right round to be up 5.8%. I think the analyst meeting post the numbers they produced today went down very well. The management message really was that they were on track with their overhaul. The profits are rising, and they think they're going to hit their self-proclaimed 6% organic growth target. So very well received in the market, and that has probably got a read over into the US stock Intuit, who make the QuickBooks product, which is Sage's rival. So you might see some movement in those in the States this afternoon.
Understood. Okay, let's take a look at M&A rumours and movers. Is anything rumouring and everything moving in M&A world today?
There is, Nick. I've come back to a story we touched on last week, which is Microsoft and Salesforce. Microsoft were one of a number of companies mentioned as a possible bidder for Salesforce last week, but story broke last night that the Microsoft are now definitely considering a bid for Salesforce, or at least that was the rumour. Salesforce were briefly, the trading in Salesforce was briefly halted on that story. It's also been said that Salesforce had received an alternative approach, or an alternate approach from somebody other than Microsoft last week, which is possibly sort of force Microsoft's hand, as it were, to at least consider making a counter offer. And then a deal proper that's actually been announced is one between Western Union, who you might be, who send money transmission across the world, big US name for doing that. They're merging with a smaller competitor, MoneyGram, in a deal worth approximately $1.5 billion. That was good news for MoneyGram shareholders, and they were up 37% in late trade. So that payment space is becoming ever more consolidated. The incumbent players having to get together as new people like Square and Apple Pay are making it easier for people to move money around the country and the world. And perhaps, the days of these old traditional money transmission services may be numbered.
Understood. Okay, let's take a look at the US data points to keep an eye on.
So a relatively quiet day in terms of a US economic data today. ADP employment change for April. This is a precursor, of course, to Friday's non-farm payrolls. Yep. We're looking for a forecast 200k read as against 189,000 for March. Not much more to say really on the data front. There's some mortgage approval numbers and 30-year mortgage rates, but the main focus, other than the ADP employment, is a speech that we'll get from Janet Yellen, the chairman of the Federal Open Markets Committee. The Fed doesn't actually, or rarely makes any kind of policy decision outside of its meetings, but people will just be reading or trying to read into her speech, looking for clues as to what the ultimate Fed policy will be. It's a well-worn
good
game.
Luck.
So I think she'll just continue to try and play with the straight bat and please everybody.
Yep.
But it's a massive earnings day again in the US. 430 listed companies report today. Not too many majors, but it's a healthy old list of names reporting there, and obviously quite a key one for earnings seasons as a whole. So lots to look at there. Okay,
let's wrap up with the US pre-market movers and levels.
There were quite a few pre-market movers today, but I picked out two that took my eye. A thing called Plasmatech Biopharma, PTBI is the ticker, up 14.24%. Why I think that's interesting is that this Plasmatech Biopharma is actually buying its rival Abeona Therapeutics, so the deal's been really well received. All about the pipeline in the drugs world, and it seems that the market feels this is a really good combination between these two companies. They're up just over 14% pre-market. And then in the peer-to-peer lending space, Lending Club up 11.4%, and it really sort of comes back to what we touched on with Western Union earlier. There's a lot of disruptive technology in the lending space as well as the money transmission space, and Lending Club showed an earnings beat and is able to raise its fees and allow it to doing so. So an alternative way of borrowing money, and one that's actually making money for the provider, and they're able to raise their fees. And many banks would probably like to be in that situation as well.
Yep.
And in terms of levels to watch today, we've got 2077 on the downside in the S&P, 2100 even on the upside. In the Dow, we're looking at 17,830 on the downside and 18,000 to the upside, so round number interest there. On euro dollar, the range has widened a bit after last week's big moves, but 110.75 I would suggest is a good level to watch to the downside. For further gains, you want to see it through 112.90 on the upside. In the Aussie, you can't keep the Aussie dollar down despite the rate cut. It's still showing decent strength against the greenback, and so we're looking at 78.71 to the downside and 80.40 as an upside level to watch. Dollar yen, holiday in Japan today, so not too much action in that, but 119.25 is our downside level, 120.50 to the upside, and as you know, we favour yen weakness as a house view. In terms of cable, ahead of the election, again a slightly wider and lower range, 150.108 on the downside and 152.50 on the upside. I suspect a lot of the volatility in that will, if there is going to be any, will materialise on Friday as we start to get election results, coming through.
Understood. Darren Sinden, market commentator at Admiral Markets, thank you for the Wall Street Crossover show. That wraps us up. We'll be back same time, 1 p.m. tomorrow, election day. Have a good day. Thank you.